Great. For those of you who are now joining us live, my name is Scotty Hill. I'm the Director of College Counseling at the Annie Wright Schools in Tacoma, Washington. And I have the privilege of working with some wonderful people today to discuss the many things that are relevant to our students who identify with all the things that are encompassed by the phrase BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color. We have some wonderful admission professionals here. We're gonna hope to have some students here to answer some questions. I think before we get started with the questions that we have, I wanna take a moment and ask all of the people who've been so generous with their time this afternoon to introduce themselves, who they are, if they're one of our professionals, what institution do they represent, and of course, maybe a little bit about their institution and why it's awesome and you should apply. And we, of course, have a student with us as well. Then we'll go ahead and do a check-in and we'll get on to some questions. But maybe we could go in a particular order. You know, Zoom does not benefit with all of us jumping in. So Robin, Windsor, Diana, and Nora, that's how you're ordered on my screen. So let's go in that order if you don't mind. So Robin, take it away.
Great, thank you so much. Hi everyone, my name is Robin Hamilton. I am the Associate Dean of Admission at Occidental College. I'm also a graduate of Occidental. I graduated in the class of 2008. I also came to Oxy from Western Washington, so not from Seattle, but from the Tacoma Puyallup area. So I am familiar with many of your schools and the areas that you all are joining us from. Occidental, for those of you that don't know, is a liberal arts college here in Los Angeles. And we are excited to share more about our institutions and our student experiences and hopefully answer your questions as well.
Hey everybody, I'm Windsor Jordan. I'm a Senior Assistant Dean and Director of Access and Equity at Swarthmore College, located right outside of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. I'm also a graduate of Swarthmore as well. I'm class of 2007 from Swarthmore College. We're a small liberal arts college again, located right outside of Philadelphia.
Wonderful, great to see virtually some colleagues, and thank you all students for joining us. My name is Diana Hernandez. My pronouns are she and hers. I am an admission counselor here at California Lutheran University. We're not too far from Occidental. We're also down in Southern California. We are a Hispanic serving institution since 2016. And as my colleagues, I'm sure I'll speak for myself, but I'm sure they as well would be happy to engage in one-on-one conversations about any one of our institutions. We'd be happy to answer any questions, but pleasure to be here with you all today.
Hi everyone, my name's Nora. I am a current senior at Occidental College. I'm a politics major, gender, women, and sexuality studies minor. And like Robin, I'm from the Seattle area and I attended Lakeside High School.
Great, thank you all for that. One of the things we talked about when we were thinking about this panel is before we dive into questions, we kind of want to know how people are feeling. Robin, Windsor, you both felt strongly that this was something we should do. So I want to turn it over to you before we launch into questions.
Sure, yeah. So we do have a Q&A feature and we would love to use that, just one to see who is in the audience, but also if you wanted to share sort of your name, what high school you are coming from, and any thoughts and feelings about how you're feeling about the college search process, about the day, about your week. We know that this has been a really unusual semester. It's been a really challenging semester. It's been a really challenging year for a variety of different reasons. And we know that that has certainly disproportionately impacted our students of color. And so it's always helpful just to kind of get a gauge of where are you at? Are you excited? Are you stressed? Are you tired? Were you able to go to the college fair this morning and are you energized from that or overwhelmed? So if you want to share that in the Q&A, you can just put that in there. So we'd love for you to share a little bit so we can just get an idea of who's here and where y'all are coming from this morning. And I'm happy to start also, since we did do my introduction, but I'll let you all know how I'm feeling and if our other panelists want to put in the Q&A too, sort of where they're at. Maybe I can't. Doesn't look as panelists we can write into the Q&A until you add something. So I will just say again, I am really excited to be here today. I think it is always hit and miss in getting to these virtual events, because it's exciting to know that I'm actually getting to talk to students, but it also makes me bummed that I'm not getting to travel to actually see you all and help you out in person. So a mixed bag of excitement, but also just a reminder of this kind of challenging time. I don't know if anyone else wants to share kind of where they're at today.
I'm just very excited to be here with you all. I enjoy talking about what we're going to get into this afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. You all, as students, high school students, are living through an extraordinarily unique time. And so I always let students know that what you're feeling, whatever it may be about your senior year in high school, or about your college search processes is valid, completely valid. Living through extraordinarily challenging times, and that's real. And so we're here, like Robin said, to support you through this process. We want you to land at a college, whether it's our colleges or not. We'd love for you to attend our colleges, obviously. We want you to be supported in this process, no matter where you're going. And so if we can help in that way, let us know.
I'm happy to share a little bit. I'm a first generation college student. You may or may not identify as such. You may be 20th generation in your family to attend college. And college in general is stressful, and there's so many pieces, and there's deadlines, and every college is different. And so I can imagine, and I remember how stressful it was for me. And now trying to figure it out in this virtual world, I cannot even imagine. And so I'm feeling a little bit of stressed for you. I want to make sure that you have all the information that you need, but I'll share kind of what was said, that I'm excited that you're all here and that we are able to engage in these conversations and offer that support.
I'll just echo everything everyone else said. I know that I'm just really grateful that this event exists, because it's something that I feel like I did not really have the opportunity to engage in as much when I was going through my college search process. And a lot more of those conversations had to be had like one-on-one with students, or just kind of figuring out by visiting a university or college what the environment was going to be like. And I've attended predominantly white institutions my whole life. And so I think that any opportunity prospective students have to ask current students with their shared identities, what that experience is like, is going to be really valuable, because I think it is a really important decision that you're making about what kind of space you're going to enter into for the next 4 years of your life, and how the people in the institution are going to shape you and you're going to shape it.
We've had some comments pop up in the Q&A. Feel free to continue to share a little bit in the Q&A as we go forward.
Sounds like we also have people in the Q&A saying that they're excited to hear from all of you, which is wonderful. That's what we were hoping for. So maybe we can go ahead and kind of dive in. And Nora, we're going to put you on the spot first. But then, of course, the admissions professionals we have here also went through the college process as students. And so if any of you want to weigh in after Nora's had a chance to talk, that would be wonderful. And I think probably the most useful question to start with, Nora, is what do you wish you had known when you were researching and applying to colleges? Like, you know, if you could go back and give yourself advice, what advice would you give?
I really wish I had reached out to more current students to ask them like the hard, uncomfortable questions I think that a lot of students are hesitant about asking. And I think that that is like a place that like I really could have gained a lot more knowledge before just coming to college and experiencing a lot of things and then having those conversations. I think that's something that I definitely wish my younger, like 18-year-old self applying to college had put a little bit, had like gotten over the discomfort of doing that. And I get that like it is so much and it is so draining, especially right now for current students applying to college, to be having those conversations, to be consistently on Zoom. But I do think that there's a lot of value in asking students like, what is your experience like at this institution? Like, what spaces have you found to be really valuable and healing or supportive? Like, where have you found community? What has been challenging, like both inside and outside of the classroom? And I think that I did not have maybe as enough understanding or enough like wherewithal to like ask those nuanced questions when I was 17 or 18, but I really wish I did. And that's something that like I've just kind of continued to learn and evolve in my time. And now I know, like, in terms of like jobs and future graduate school and things like that, those are things that I'm definitely keeping in mind, but I think that could really benefit like high school seniors now.
I'll add an answer to that question. So connects to what you just said, Nora. One of the things that I asked when I was going through my college search process of schools I was looking at and things, and this is what I encourage you all to ask too, is find out what is the college like for people who walk through the world like you walk through the world, right? So if you walk through the world as a first generation college student, if you walk through the world as a Native student, as African American student, as an LGBTQ student, however you walk through the world, find out what that place is like for people that share your experience, right? So ask those questions. This is what I did in my info sessions with counselors. I was like, "Hey, I'm a Black male from the South. What's it like to be at your college as a Black male from the South?" And then pay attention to how colleges answer that question, right? Pay attention to how admissions officers talk about the spaces, resources at institutions you're thinking about applying to. But really, like Nora said, it's really important. Find out what the place is like for folks who share your experiences. Whatever that identity is you're coming from, whatever resources you think you'll need, ask those questions of current students, faculty, and of course admissions folks like ourselves.
All right, I would love to ask a follow-up question, Scotty, if that's okay. Just to sort of like, are there certain aspects of your college experience or services or supports or even just like your peers that have like surprised you in how helpful they have been and how supportive they've been that you maybe didn't have on your radar as an incoming student?
Yeah, I definitely think there are a lot of spaces, both kind of created by the college and then also created by students, that I felt like so much warmth and so much surprise about how much people were looking to connect with me and how people were just ready and willing to accept me however I showed up. And I think those spaces have become really important in my life in college because they have become kind of like this place where you can gain energy, gain support when you're dealing with a lot of different things in college related to academics, social, personal, all these things. And I think kind of like whether that's like a residential space, like living in a multicultural hall or something like that, or if it's just like, I think a lot about my job, where my on-campus job is I normally work in the mailroom, and it's like an almost like entirely BIPOC student space where all the student workers are almost all BIPOC students, and my supervisor like runs the Filipino club, and I feel like that just became like an important space for me in college. And I think about what are the different spaces that have become like the places where I'm just like, oh, I need my time here. I need my time with my people here. I think I've been surprised about how important those have become in my life and how just organic they can develop in college as well, just given the people around you, because I think a lot of other students are looking to connect with other people. We're looking to like hold each other and support each other and hold each other up.
I think that's a great transition actually to some of the next set of questions that we wanted to talk about. How do you find those spaces where you can be supported? How do you figure out in advance that they exist? And we thought a little bit about the questions that all of you might want to ask an admission professional, both from their perspective as a professional, but maybe also their perspective as a student, identified as a student of color going to college. And so I want to toss this out to everyone. Nora, feel free to chime in, but really with the sort of that professional hat on, I think students would love to know, what should they be looking for and thinking about as they research or apply to colleges? One of the questions we talked about was, how do you learn about how an institution is responding to Black Lives Matter? What offices or departments or groups are going to tell you the most you need to know about how supportive a school is of someone who identifies as BIPOC? I'd love to hear all the different answers to those very heavy questions.
I'm happy to get the conversation going. I think, and it's hard, right? But I think just asking the admission counselors, what is the university's response on any social justice issue, I think will be important. And then realizing or seeing what the admission counselors, what their response is. If they're like, oh, then you're like, oh, okay, maybe it's there isn't a response. But if they're like, that's a great question. And I will say, I, as an admission counselor, don't know everything that there is going on about Cal Lutheran. And so, for example, if that's something that I didn't know, I might say, student, that is a great question. Like, thank you for asking. Let me get your information so I can give you the best information. Let me get you in touch with our director for the Center of Cultural Engagement and Inclusion. Let me get you in touch with this person if I didn't know the answer myself. But I think the response, or that initial response of the admission counselor, says a lot about what type of information is out there, what the response has been. I will say here at Cal Lutheran, we've talked a lot about all of the different social justice issues going on at a national level, I will say international level as well, but also on campus, right? Every campus will have something that everyone's working on and what the students want to see change. And so I think asking those questions, and I think another really important question is going to be is, what specific policies are being changed, right? So it's maybe not just a response of like issuing an email that says that they're in support. It's like, great, but are things actually being done to show that solidarity with our students that identify as BIPOC? And the last thing I'll say, and then I'll definitely let Winsor and Robin and Nora jump in, is what are students asking for and how are their responses being heard? So I know, for example, our Black students wanted a space that they would be able to, in a way, call their own and have that safe space to come together. And that's something that the university is able to do. I know we have a lot of different cultural and social justice clubs on our campus. And I think now more than ever, our administration is like, okay, we see you, we hear you, like, let's have those conversations of what is needed for you to be able to succeed. So I think asking those questions and really seeing what the initial response is says a lot.
I would agree with everything Diana said. Other places you can go can be things like a student newspaper, because oftentimes that's where you see some really unfiltered student voices, opinion pages. You can get to some of those questions of like, what are students asking for? What are students finding friction with the administration about? Most campuses, or hopefully the campuses you're looking at, will have some sort of intercultural center or multicultural or diversity space. If a school doesn't have that, if they aren't devoting the resources of professional staff and office space to that, that's definitely telling, and that could maybe communicate some of their values. You can also look at a college's mission. So we know that a lot of campuses and institutions set really strong missions and they have strong values. And so we don't know that that's always being lived out. But if you don't see those commitments to equity and diversity and justice in a mission, it's unlikely that they're then devoting resources and making it a priority on campus. And so if you see it in a mission, it doesn't mean like, great, they're doing everything they're supposed to be doing. It's just kind of one stop, but that's another place to start looking as well, in addition to connecting with your admission counselor and hopefully them being able to have the answer or to point you to those correct spaces, or to point to, yeah, here's the plan that we've enacted, or here's an office that you can talk with, or here's a group of current students that you can ask those questions about their actual lived experiences too.
I'll just add one more thing as well. So obviously in a virtual world, you all are experiencing colleges very differently. But I would think pay attention to what type of virtual opportunities a college is offering. And so you obviously might have, there might be faculty panels that a college is offering, or opportunities to speak with current students, obviously. But there might be also opportunities to speak to the heads of the cultural centers that like Robin mentioned, that colleges are offering as well. So pay attention to how colleges are presenting themselves and where there are opportunities to connect with folks who can tell you about the experience of people like yourselves at the colleges you're looking at, right? And you can do the same thing with college interviews. So lots of colleges are offering interviews online now. That's a great place to kind of share more about yourself. But college interviews are important because it's also a chance for you to interview the college, to find out if it's a place that you actually want to go to and attend, because you're talking to using alumni, or maybe a current student or an admissions officer who knows the place really well, like answer your questions in depth. So that's another space where you can go and bring your questions regarding, again, what's it like to be me at this college? So I think those virtual events you can ask questions about, go to those things, use those things well. And there's opportunities to engage with in the college interview space, and you're comfortable doing that. That's an opportunity to ask those questions as well. And of course, use those virtual opportunities that colleges might be offering to ask those questions too, and then pay attention to what the offerings are, right? What's not offered may give insight into what's happening at an institution or give you a sense of that as well. But bring those questions about what's it like to be me at this place to those spaces too.
I would definitely echo what everyone else said. I think for me, a huge thing is like trying to figure out like what are the priorities of this institution, and like kind of like Robin said, like everyone can have a very bold mission statement, but you can really quickly see from like a student newspaper or talking to current students, like, oh, has the administration like met the demands of what students want? Have they kind of put their money where their mouth is, definitely like financially in terms of funding opportunities for students, funding certain departments, and things like that. I think a huge thing is also thinking about like BIPOC faculty members, like what are kind of the demographics of who might be taught at a school. I think can have a big impact. Kind of what do like Black studies or ethnic studies look like at that school. I think those are all kind of big factors in terms of figuring out kind of how has the school evolved or changed, and how are they responding to what kind of students are asking for now.
I want to just add one more quick thing that all of these amazing panelists made me think of, and it's the faculty and staff numbers in terms of, do they represent their student body? I think that is something that I as a student wasn't looking for. I didn't know to ask what percentage of your faculty identifies as someone that looks like me, someone that identifies as me. Same thing with staff. I think that's really important, because if mission statement is about inclusion and equity and access, but their entire, maybe even like cabinet, right? Like their high-end administration, their board of regents, like looking at those demographics, I think says a lot. But you as students will be engaging with the staff and faculty the most. And so really making sure that you will have people who identify like you do, who look like you do, that have maybe some shared experiences as you do, that will be able to guide and mentor you, I think is really important.
And there's a question in the Q&A that I think we've definitely touched on some of the, but the follow-up was, a lot of colleges have a multicultural office, but what are other signs that they're continued to true inclusion? I think even looking at the multicultural office, whatever that may be on the campus, of like, do they actually have programming? Is it just an office where it's a person that you can maybe email if there's a grievance or an incident on campus? But are they hosting programming, and like how diverse is that programming? Are they having conversations about intersectionality within identities? Are a lot of different types of students being invited into that intercultural center? Or is it just sort of like, yeah, we have an intercultural center and students can come there if they want to like have a quiet place to study, but we don't plan programming or awareness, or they don't work with different cultural groups on campus. So kind of finding out if you can see, is there connections between the students and those offices, or those offices actually working for and with students in some way, can be really important too.
I want to jump in here and say that something I'm hearing a lot is the very good advice of kind of doing a little bit of extra digging on a college, taking the extra time to reach out to students, taking the extra time to look for a multicultural center. And I want to acknowledge that that's a burden that the students who are interested in these topics have that maybe other students don't. And so as someone who is a college counselor at one of the schools that's hosting this event, I know that many of the college counselors in the Seattle area are not people who identify as BIPOC, but I definitely have had students come to me and say, I really care about this, and I don't know how to figure it out, or I'm not getting the answer I need. And I've definitely called, the Robin, the Windsor, the Diana, whatever the schools they're interested in, and said, okay, really, like, what's going on? You got to tell me. I've got a student who really cares about it. So please feel free in this moment to lean on people who maybe have a little bit more bandwidth than you do, who have more connections than you do. It's extra work and you shouldn't bear it alone. So just from the college counseling perspective, like, please feel free to let your counselors know that this might be an extra part of your research and see if they can help out with that. That's enough for my PSA, and I want to bring us to another question. I heard a lot also, how do you know a college is putting their money where their mouth is? How do you know that the college truly values the things that I value? And I think something that we talked about before we started this panel is the response of an institution to COVID-19. And the response of an institution in a way that maybe protected people who are more vulnerable. And we know that there is an intersection there between communities of color and the damage that COVID-19 has done. And so it may be trickier, but I'd love to hear how might someone approach that? How might someone figure that out? If anybody wants to tackle that, that would be great.
Can start. I think it's similar in the start. I think your admission counselor or your college counselor, are really great places to start, especially if you know that there are students from your high school that are at the institution that you're looking at. The college counselor might be actually engaging with those folks. They may know, they may be able to connect with you with the alumni that are on our campuses. And so they may be a really good resource. But again, I think checking in with your admission counselor, asking sort of, are students living on campus? Are they not living on campus? What safety precautions have been put in place? What sort of additional financial and monetary support have been afforded to students that have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19? How has your campus thought about the technology gap and an equity gap there? How have you been flexible with students making progress towards graduation? Has there been any changes in ways that students can navigate that? Has advising continued? How are you working with your international students and students in different time zones, things like that? Just thinking about all the ways that your lives have been impacted equally through COVID-19. And so thinking about the things that have been maybe helpful that your school has done, find out if those sorts of accommodations are happening, or maybe there's things you wish your campus had done that would have been more helpful, or you're thinking, now that we're doing school from home, I'm actually working 30 hours a week. And normally during school, I only work 10 hours a week. Here's how I've had to accommodate that. How would that translate on a college campus? Ask those questions, because it hopefully will be really telling about how campuses care for their students and what they're able to do. And certainly resources differ across every campus. And so not every campus can do every single thing that we would hope we can, but hopefully there has been some empathy and some real care in the response that campuses have taken to the pandemic.
I think the only thing I will add is, now that a lot of places are looking to reopen, I would ask, or I would want information about that piece. So not only resources that have been given out or that are already in place, but in terms of, for example, you may be in the group of people that maybe are immunosuppressed, right? Or maybe you have a family member. And so what will that look like? Will they require for you to be on campus? What happens if you get sick? What is the protocol of that? Like, will your parents be able to come and get you? Do they, what all of those questions I think are also important as we move forward in this very big unknown. I wish somebody had the answers and would be like, here's what's going to happen. We don't know. And that's the scary truth of it all. And so I think having for yourself a lot of different plans. Okay, plan A is going to be this, plan B is going to be this. And then having even smaller plans, A.1, A.2. So like, and asking what that will look like for you if you're at any, not just ours, but any college campus. What would that look like for you?
I guess I'll just add here, another way to think about this question is, what are the values and the principles the college is leading with and making these really challenging choices, right? Like, again, like Robin said, all of us, all colleges around the country have different sets of resources they might be making different choices based on what resources they have and what capabilities they have. And so one question to ask colleges, okay, might not know what the future holds, but what are the values and principles you're using in front of you to help you decide what are the best choices to make? So how are you thinking about what students are most vulnerable and how are you serving them? So what sets of things and values are kind of most important as a colleague is making those decisions about how they want to move forward?
I would say you can also, again, the resources, you can also look and see most campuses have like COVID announcement websites, and most of that is very, very public. And so you can actually kind of go through and track sort of how they've progressed, read their FAQs, see what kind of programs they've instituted. That is a really helpful way. And I don't know, Diana or Windsor, if you want to share anything that your campuses have done just as examples. Like one thing that Oxy has done is, while we are certainly essentially closed and are doing all remote learning, we do have a number of students that are living on campus because Oxy is the safest place for them to be while they're trying to complete their education. And so we've allowed students to stay on campus. It's a really small number, and obviously there's safety protocols, but we know that for some students, staying at home, being able to do their coursework and be successful is not possible. So like that's just like one example of things that maybe campuses have or could have done. I don't know if Windsor or Diana, you have other examples of things that folks could just like keep an eye out for. Again, not what they would have to do, but just some examples.
Yeah, so one thing we've done at Swarthmore, again, similar to what's going on at Occidental, is certainly keeping students on campus. You can't go back home for any number of reasons. Maybe home is not safe. So we have about 700 students on campus currently. First-year students and sophomores were invited back, come back if they wanted to, and we're going to invite juniors and seniors back this spring to campus if they want to come back. We're testing students every week. And also doing the same thing for staff who are on campus as well, and faculty who are on campus. Most courses are still being taught remotely, but we do have some courses that are taught outdoors in big tents with social distancing and things like that. But also meant providing resources for students. So students who didn't have access to computers back at home or didn't have access to items they needed to continue their work, making sure they have those things. Providing flights for students if they need to get back home or need to come to campus, covering those things if the students couldn't cover it themselves. So just really making sure our students were in a place they could be safely continuing their education with us, whether it's remotely on campus or wherever they were around the country or even around the world.
Yeah, and for Cal Lutheran, it was a lot of what my colleagues have shared. I'll share that an additional piece that our faculty, really, it was our faculty that did this, is our academic calendar changed. And so our semester of classes, because we do have a small percentage of classes that are taught in those outdoor spaces, most of them, I will say, I can't say all, but most of them are still taught virtually. But after Thanksgiving, the semester will end. And so then students are able to go home to spend that holiday in whichever space that may be, maybe not necessarily celebrating Thanksgiving as it is, but just really spending time with family. For example, that's what I do with my family, but really knowing that they don't necessarily have to come back to campus if they were living on campus, to try to eliminate the amount of traveling that they'll have to do, maybe exposing their family, exposing their roommates, and vice versa. So that was something our faculty were tasked to do. And they know that it's, again, just in the precaution, trying to keep our students as safe as possible.
I want to jump in and say that we are coming towards the end. We will need to wrap up promptly at 2:45 local time. So I want to make sure we've left some time for more spontaneous question and answer. There's an answer in the Q&A that I think is a good one. It sort of extrapolates on what we've been talking about. And then we can go on to others. So if you have other questions, now is definitely the time to write them in. There's a good question here about making sure that equity and inclusion is in the curriculum, is in the teaching practices, regardless of whether it's STEM or humanities. How do you figure out if equity inclusion is represented? How do you figure out if you're getting texts assigned to you that represent everyone? How do you figure out if maybe that STEM course that you're going to be taking is maybe old-fashioned? I don't know how to get at that. Maybe Nora, I can pick on you a little bit and say, are there examples of where diversity, equity, inclusion has shown up for you in your coursework and how you might have figured that out in advance?
Yeah, I think a big thing for me, especially coming into college where I didn't really know any of the professors. I didn't really know anyone at the college. So I couldn't necessarily pull on those networks to tell me like, oh, like what classes or like what professors might like be the most interesting or most in line with this subject area. Is that I did a lot of like Oxy has like the full course catalog available for students. Even if you're not an Oxy student, you can just go online and look at it. And I would read like hundreds of course descriptions and see like what authors were they saying that we were going to read, what was kind of like the main topics of the class they said we were going to engage with. And then sometimes I would look up the professors and be like, what is like their field of research, what kind of things are they engaged with or studying. I think also I looked up sometimes if they like did research over the summer with a student, what was that research project. So I feel like I got a sense of like, what is this teacher super passionate about? And so then how can I expect that to kind of show up in the classroom? And I think from that, I have gotten like a better sense of, okay, what is it going to be like for me to be in this classroom? What can I kind of expect from that? And I think that it's hard definitely going into college and not already having those networks, and that a lot of it is going to be finding your way around, asking people who've taken classes ahead of you, like what it's like and things like that. And that a lot of that comes from being in class with other people and being an actual college student. Because now as a senior, I can look back and be like, oh, like these courses were amazing. Like these ones I would like highly recommend to other people. But a lot of it is just kind of navigating an institution the best you can with the resources that you have. I definitely think that there's a lot of research you can do online to figure out what a course might be like, or what a curriculum might be like, by looking at kind of faculty members, the kinds of students that are enrolled in those courses, like what those students are doing, or even alumni who have come from those departments, like where their paths have gone. And then also like talking, again, I'm always just going to repeat talking to current students, because I do think that's like the number one way to get a sense of like, is equity and inclusion being played out in the classroom?
Nora, just as a follow-up, I know that centering sort of your own identity and in conversations identity has factored into your academic path as you become a senior and start sort of like senior thesis projects and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about maybe how you had a chance and an opportunity, if you would like to, and other students again, if you would like to like center your own identity in your academic work and have that be important in college?
Yeah, I think college is like a very potentially like turbulent time for students to be figuring out their senses of self in the world. And for me, definitely like who I came in at the beginning of my first year and kind of how I'm exiting now has definitely been altered and shaped by my college experience. And a huge part of that has been kind of me taking advantage of different opportunities and spaces offered to me by the college to explore those facets of identity. So the main one for me that I can think of is study abroad. I'm Japanese American, and I'm fourth generation, and none of my immediate family has ever been to Japan. And coming into college, I wasn't like planning on taking Japanese, like that was just not really on my radar. But through kind of like more experiences I had, through meeting other students of color, meeting other Japanese students who have kind of found their sense of identity in college, I was like, oh, this is something that's really important to me. And I started taking Japanese at Oxy. I went and studied abroad for a semester in Japan. I got support from our international programs office to do that. And it was kind of like, it could be seen as like an academic detour because it didn't necessarily like directly relate to my like politics major, even though I did still take classes there. But it was something where I was like, this is an experience that I want because of how it relates to my identity and how I see myself kind of in the world and particularly at this institution. And so I was able to have an experience like that in college where I came out of it with a stronger sense of like, oh, who am I in this world? How do I move through the world? And I think that's something I feel really grateful for. And I think there are lots of other opportunities for students to have like spaces and opportunities for those kind of experiences in college, no matter what form they may take. Yeah.
There's a really good question in the chat that I hope we have time to address. Students asking, if you identify as BIPOC, did you ever feel like your school was only interested in you because of that identity that you kind of brought to the community? I know that that's something that is there for a lot of students. So for our admission professionals, if you feel like sharing your own experience, Nora, if you feel like you sharing your own experience, that would be lovely. If nobody does, that's okay. But what do we do with that sense of tokenism and that sense of you only want me for what you're assuming about me?
I could talk a little bit. I guess I think that's definitely a common feeling. I just want to validate that that students have in college when they see like their same picture on the brochure like recycled like over and over and over, which is like a common experience I've talked to other students about at different institutions as well. So I just want to say that's very real. But I think it's trying to figure out, how does the institution value you? Are they investing in your growth as a student? Are they financially investing in you in terms of what opportunities they're offering, how they're supporting you? Are your teachers investing in your growth, not just like how you are in class, but like how you learn in the world? And I think that those are like huge questions and important ones to ask. And I think that it's like across the board, it's clear that colleges want to invest in BIPOC students for various reasons. But getting kind of down to like the put your money where their mouth is question is like, are you investing in me as a person? Like, are you invested in me as a student? Do you care about the things I'm trying to do? Are you like willing to listen to my concerns that I have about this institution or about this thing? And I think that is kind of usually where you see a lot of the difference is the institution willing to listen and then take action. And that's when I have felt like the most valued in spaces, when I felt like, oh, someone is really hearing me right now, and they're not just seeing me, but they are hearing and internalizing. And then I have trust in them to take action. And that's not always there. It's going to depend on the space and who you're talking to and the institution. But I think that's kind of like the main thing about like, well, like, do people care about you at the place? Like, are you valued, not just for how you demographically represent?
Nora, I want to say thank you for that and your rawness and your vulnerability. Like I really appreciate that. And to the students that are asking those questions, same to you. Like thank you for sharing that. I think it is hard, and I want to again just emphasize what Nora said. Like I want to validate that. I think in addition to everything Nora said, I think something that's really important for our BIPOC students to do is find their allies on campus. Find those staff, those faculty that you know, whether they identify the same as you or no, but know that they are doing the work, that it's not just like, let me say that I'm doing it and therefore like it's done. It's like, no, this is a continuous thing. And find those people, and they'll be out there. Like they tend to be really vocal about their allyship, and those are the allies that you want, so that if at any moment something isn't okay with you, for you, it may be for someone else, but for you, it doesn't mean it has to be. At that moment, you know who you can turn to, and you know that they are going to be there for you, that they're going to go bat for you. I think is something that's really important. Something that's also been going around in my head is what Scotty had mentioned about, this is a lot of work, right? Researching, like looking at mission statements. Like I didn't even know what that was when I was in high school, like zero idea. I will say, put it on us, right? Us as admission counselors, this is our job to help you find if our institution is or isn't the right space. If I help you find out that Cal Lutheran isn't right for you, I feel like I still did my job. So I will say, make a list of your questions and send it out to the admission counselors and say, hey, I would like some more information about this, this, and this. And if it's 20 questions, great. It's our job to make sure that we're giving you that information. So don't necessarily feel like you have to do all the digging. Maybe just send an email, copy and paste to all the different institutions that you're sending it to, and make us do that work for you.
I love that advice as actionable advice. And I think that is a really fantastic place to maybe pause on the conversation, not end the conversation, but pause on the conversation. And in the moment that we have remaining to us, I would love it if everybody on the panel could just reintroduce yourself and remind all of our guests what institutions you represent, if you're willing to be contacted, anything like that. So again, Robin, Windsor, Diana, and Nora, if you could go ahead and do that would be great.
Thanks everyone for joining us, and thank you for your wonderful questions. Robin, again at Occidental College. You can find my contact information up on our website, and I'm happy to be contacted.
Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate the questions and the comments from our panelists here. Windsor Jordan from Swarthmore College. You can find my contact information online as well, wjordan1@swarthmore.edu. Happy to talk more and answer more questions.
Thank you all. Diana Hernandez from Cal Lutheran. I changed my name to my email, so you should see that there. Feel free to reach out if anything comes up.
Thanks, everyone. I'm Nora. I think I'm on the Ask a Student page at Oxy. My email is efujiyuhas@oxy.edu, and thank you so much for this.
Thank you all so much for your time. And I hope that all of you who have tuned in recognize that there are some really wonderful human beings on the other end of this process that might seem really stressful and overwhelming, but there are people who gave up their Sunday to come and talk to you. And I hope that that comes as really good news. Any last words of wisdom before Julie comes back on and boots us off the Zoom call? And there she is.
Hang in there. You got this. There's people here that will help you on your high school side, college side. We believe in you, and we want to see you do what you want to do. So don't hesitate to reach out, not just to us, but to anyone.
Well, on behalf of StriveScan and the Seattle Area Independent Schools, I want to thank all of you for being part of this today. And students, good luck with your college searches. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.